Everyone knows Serena Williams as the woman who dominated tennis for more than 2 decades. But her story is far more than a collection of match scores and trophies. Born on September 26, 1981 in Saginaw, Michigan, Serena Jamaica Williams grew up in Compton, California, alongside her sister Venus. The backdrop was anything but glamorous. Cracked public courts surrounded by chain-link fences, the occasional sound of sirens in the distance. But to the Williams family, those courts were the start of something extraordinary. Her father, Richard Williams, didn't come from the tennis world. In fact, he learned the game from instructional videos and books, driven by a belief that his daughters could become champions. Her mother, Oracene Price, brought discipline, calm, and an unshakable sense of purpose. Together, they created a plan, training Serena and Venus daily, sometimes for hours, under the California sun. By the early 1990s, the family made a bold move, relocating to Florida so the sisters could train at Rick Massey's tennis academy. It was here that Serena's raw power, fierce competitiveness, and natural athleticism began to sharpen against the toughest young players in the country. At just 14 years old, Serena turned professional in 1995. She entered a world where most players had been competing for years, but she stepped on court with a confidence that made people stop and watch. The breakthrough everyone had been waiting for came in 1999 at the US Open. At only 17, Serena stormed through the draw, defeating top players and eventually overcoming Martina Hingis in the final. With that victory, she became the first African-American woman to win a Grand Slam singles title in the Open era since Althea Gibson in 1958. It was more than a win. It was a signal that tennis was changing. The early 2000s were a whirlwind. In 2002, Serena won the French Open, Wimbledon, and the US Open, defeating Venus in all 3 finals. By the Australian Open in 2003, she held all 4 major titles at once. The Serena Slam. She wasn't just beating opponents, she was redefining the game. Her serve, one of the most feared in tennis history, could change a match in seconds. Her explosive movement and ability to switch from defense to attack left opponents scrambling. But like any champion's journey, hers had setbacks. Injuries sidelined her, and critics questioned whether she could ever dominate again. Serena answered those doubts the only way she knew how, by winning. In 2007 and 2009, she took home the Australian Open title, adding more slams in the years that followed. By 2012, she had reclaimed her place at the very top, winning Wimbledon, the US Open, and Olympic gold in both singles and doubles. She became the first tennis player in history to achieve a career Golden Slam in both categories, a milestone that few even dream of. In the mid-2000s teens, she continued to defy expectations. At 33, she completed another Serena Slam, sweeping all 4 majors from the 2014 US Open to the 2015 Wimbledon. And in 2017, she achieved one of the most remarkable feats in sports, winning the Australian Open while 8 weeks pregnant. It was the ultimate display of mental and physical resilience. By then, her statistics were staggering. 23 Grand Slam singles titles, the most in the Open era, 14 Grand Slam doubles titles with Venus, 319 weeks ranked world number 1, including 186 consecutive weeks, tied for the record. But numbers alone couldn't capture her impact. Serena had brought a new kind of power to women's tennis. Physical power, yes, but also cultural power. She stood unapologetically herself, challenging outdated norms and speaking openly about equality, race, and representation in sport. From the cracked courts of Compton to the grandest stages in tennis, Serena Williams wasn't just building a career, she was rewriting what was possible. And even at the height of her dominance, her story was still far from over. Serena Williams' influence began to evolve long before she played her final match. For years, the headlines focused on her trophies and records, but her life beyond the court was starting to define her legacy just as powerfully. In 2017, After winning the Australian Open while 8 weeks pregnant, Serena gave birth to her daughter, Alexis Olympia Ohanian Jr., later that year. It should have been a purely joyful moment, but it quickly turned life-threatening. Complications after childbirth left her with a pulmonary embolism, a condition she had faced before, and forced her into an emergency medical battle. Instead of keeping it private, Serena spoke openly about her experience, shining a light on the alarming disparities in maternal health care, especially for Black women in the United States. She became an advocate, urging for better policies, greater awareness, and equal access to quality care for mothers everywhere. Motherhood didn't dim her ambition. Just months after becoming a parent, she returned to the court in 2018 and reached 4 Grand Slam finals. The feat was remarkable, not only for the physical demands, but for the emotional balance required to compete at the highest level while raising a young child. Serena redefined what it meant to be an athlete mother, challenging the outdated belief that parenthood marks the end of a woman's prime. Her very presence sent a message. Ambition and family could not only coexist, they could thrive together. As her career moved forward, Serena's voice grew louder in the fight for equality. She spoke out against the pay gap between men's and women's tennis, called for more diversity in leadership, and wasn't afraid to challenge officials when she felt fairness was at stake. While some of these moments sparked controversy, they also made clear that she believed in standing her ground. She showed athletes everywhere, especially women, that it was not just acceptable, but necessary to speak up. Off the court, Serena was building something equally impressive, a business empire. She launched Serena Ventures, a venture capital firm with a mission to invest in early-stage companies led by women and people of color. This was not a symbolic gesture. She personally backed dozens of startups, proving that she was as strategic in the boardroom as she was on the baseline. For Serena, economic empowerment was part of the bigger fight for equality, and she was determined to create opportunities where they were most needed. Her partnerships with global brands also began to reflect her values. While she had always been a sought-after figure for endorsements, she increasingly chose collaborations that aligned with her principles. Her authenticity, competitive edge, and refusal to be boxed in by stereotypes made her a unique cultural force. The Serena effect meant that her involvement gave a brand instant credibility and global relevance. In 2022, Serena announced she would evolve away from tennis rather than call it a retirement. It was a subtle but important choice of words. She wasn't ending her story, just turning the page. Even in leaving the sport, she controlled the narrative, just as she had controlled so many matches over the years. Her legacy is now etched across multiple worlds. On the court, 23 Grand Slam singles titles, 14 doubles titles, 4 Olympic gold medals, and over 2 decades at the sport's pinnacle. Off the court, a global voice for equality, a business leader investing in diverse talent, and a role model for resilience and determination. She has been studied in business schools, cited in social justice discussions, and celebrated as a cultural icon who transcends the limits of sport. Serena's story is, at its core, one of resilience. She broke through barriers of race, gender, and class in a sport that was never built to include her. She transformed personal struggles into public platforms for change and used her success to open doors for others. Years from now, when people speak her name, they won't just talk about the records. They'll remember the woman who reimagined what it meant to be a champion, who fought for fairness, who lifted others as she climbed, and who left a mark on the world that no scoreboard could measure. Serena Williams may have stepped away from the tour, but her impact will be felt for generations.